Thank you for that. I'd love to. And so obviously that class was a major pivot point. And if you go from there, I spent 2 years at Stanford studying geology and energy. And then I went to work for ARCO from 82 to 85. And I had a very unusual, so this was still a time when we had a energy crisis going on. And if you could spell the word oil and you were a woman, you could have 30 job offers, and 28 of them were in Houston. One was in Harahan, Louisiana, and one was in Denver, Colorado. And I took the one in Denver, and I got to work on a national project as an earth scientist, looking at all the interior basins of the United States. And I was asked to become an expert on two things that were new and changing. One was natural gas, which nobody had cared about. We actually called natural gas the booby prize of looking for oil back then. But there was interest growing, and ARCO asked me to become an expert on the experts, which was, in retrospect, very hard to do because we had no internet to speak of back then. And the other thing that happened back in the 82 era was we had just figured out that oil did not come from dinosaurs, but it came from dead algae. And so the rocks that are called hydrocarbon source rocks that have that ancient organic material, our whole view of that was in it's upside down. It was a whole new way to think about things. And they asked me again to become an expert on the experts in that space. And so that built a skill for me to curate expertise, because I know I'm not the smartest person. And it also trained me in a way that was otherwise wouldn't have happened, to look at the whole United States and to try and understand where were the best places for certain things. The next pivot point for me, and I saw in the chat that one of my wonderful classmates is on this webinar, is I had the privilege of attending Stanford Business School, and I had where I got an MBA. And through an interesting set of circumstances, I basically started with, my colleague. We co-founded what became Map Energy while I was in business school. Because my parents had passed away, I needed to work while I was in school, and I was privileged to get a job consulting to Stanford's endowment. And they had a bequest of oil and gas royalty interests that had to be reinvested in more oil and gas royalty interests. And through an interesting set of circumstances, I was put in a position to help solve that problem. And the treasurer of the university said, here's the money, invest directly for Stanford, but go form a fund and co-invest. And that was really the birth of Map Energy. And so that was not very many people who start business school, start incubating a fund management platform while they're there that they never planned to do. And so that's definitely a pivot point. And for so many people, I think that I'm around a lot of young people who think they have to have a plan. That certainly was not my plan when I got to business school, but it worked out really well. So the next step, Lori, is that in 1991, about 4 years after I got out of business school, I was actually recruited to bring back the class that had changed my life. So it had been called Survey of the Energy Industry. We call it Understand Energy. And I've been delivering that at Stanford for 32 years now with a variety of colleagues, with the ambition being, from an impact point of view, if the class could do what it did for me for hundreds of students over time, that was a scaling vector, if you will, to help facilitate this understanding of the energy system. So MAP was born in 1985, 86, while I was in business school, and invested in natural gas all the way up until 2015. But in 2003, another pivot took place, which is we were investing very early in the shale gas plays across the United States, in the tight sand reservoirs for Stanford and for our partners, endowments, foundations, and families. And it turns out the gaseous parts of the United States are also the windiest. And so in the late 90s, I started imagining, could we invest in royalty interests associated with wind farms? And it took us till 2003 to do so, but we began blending wind royalty investment in with our natural gas funds in 2003. And looking back 20 years later, and I have to say really firmly, only because of two of my extraordinary partners, we find ourselves looking back that we incubated probably in the neighborhood of about a fifth of all the wind in the United States out of these funds, doing the very early stage development of these projects as the whole, in the beginning, people were really they didn't believe in wind, they were afraid of wind. And so part of the pattern in my career, as I wrap up this summary here in a moment, is that really early in the shale gas plays, really early in wind, thanks to my colleagues, And those same colleagues brought us very early into very large-scale solar project development and incubation. We basically ran a nursery or a hatchery, if you will, for NextEra, NG, EDF, some of the big owner-operators who just couldn't incubate as many projects as they need for their pipeline themselves as they'd like to. So we and our teams played a really important role in that. So, and then at the end of 2020, the same two partners who helped us get into wind, solar, and storage played a really exciting role in finding an extraordinary partner who provided an exit out of wind, solar, and storage for MAP. And that led, we have a remarkable team at MAP that runs the gas business, and I shifted roles to a founding partner at the end of, really in early 2021. And I looked around because I'd been teaching for 3 decades, and I saw extraordinary former students who were launching early stage climate tech funds. And these were not, there was so much more to the story in every case. And in each case, these now early 40-year-old former students had incredible resumes to be doing this at this time. And so when you look back at gas, wind, solar, storage, and now early stage climate tech, I feel very privileged that in all these cases, there is a time where you want to enter and kind of catch the wave. And I feel like we've been able to do that. And one last part of the trajectory to now, if you will, is, you know, a wonderful, I mean, they're just incredible students that have come through the classes that I've delivered over the years. And the one is relatively famous, and that's J.B. Straubel, who's the co-founder of Tesla and the CEO of Redwood Materials. And about 3 years ago, with him having no idea that MAP was having this exit, he introduced me to Dave Danielson at Breakthrough Energy Ventures. And Dave has cultivated a teaching team that delivers a class called Stanford Climate Ventures. And almost 40 companies have come out of that class. And so a disclosure is I live a block from campus and have for over 30 years. And so being able to go over and be involved in all this innovation and incubation is definitely part of the story that's led to now and Woven Earth Ventures. So thank you for indulging me in that long, fairly unique and idiosyncratic story of getting to now.